Hawkins collated all of his research and put it together into something called the Map of Consciousness, which attempts to describe how energy attractor fields may operate and how they may affect us. Hawkins states that energy fields can be simply broken into two groups. Those energy fields which support and nurture life, shown by the upward arrows from the level of courage, which calibrates at 200, and those which are detrimental to life, shown by the downward arrows beneath the level of 200. And he says that all cells, creatures, plants, and millions of years of evolution have conditioned all atoms and cells to be able to distinguish between good or bad energies outside of our primary five sense perception. Like if you smell some food and you instantly know not to eat it, though you don't know why. I think it's how we survived before we had the clever thinking egoic brain, and I think it's how animals make decisions and how they survive to this day. So it's not a huge leap of faith to consider that if it was how evolution initially designed us to be, then those systems will still reside within us, though may have been swamped by our ridiculous, as nature would see them, human concepts of logic and reason. Probably best if I can give you an example. As I've said many times, guilt is just self-abuse. You are punishing yourself many times each day for a single thing that you did once, many years ago, which most people don't even know about. Or you're believing another person who is trying to guilt you, rather than saying to them, if you continue to keep trying to make me feel bad, I will have to remove myself from your presence as an act of kindness to myself. Yeah? I would presume that from nature's perspective, guilt would seem unloving, controlling, and quite absurd. You know, I think any other of nature's creatures being exposed to that low energy behavior would just bite that aggressor or move away from them out of their own instinctual self-preservation. Okay, I hope this is making some sense. Okay, if we jump back to the map of consciousness, okay, allow me to try and explain it as best I can. And remember, this is just a model, but it's one I like, and it's one that makes sense, and it's one that gives me a structure I can follow, and so far this has been uncannily accurate for me and throughout my life. So the energy levels, which start at 0, which indicates death, or you might say the absence of life energy, and they rise up to 600, which represents the transition away from the fearful ego sense of self with a small s to alignment with your higher self or your spiritual self or the self with a capital S, which of course is based in love, trust and optimism rather than fear, doubt and control, which, as you know, can be very, very exhausting. In addition, these energy levels of 0 to 600, they're based on a mathematical log scale, meaning 200 is not twice the power of 100. What it means is 100, it's 100 to the 10th power, which means it's 10 times 10, 100 times, whereas 200 is 10 times 10, 200 times. So it's each sort of doubling of the number is almost incomprehensibly more powerful. So each step up through these levels of consciousness indicates an enormous increase in the energy available to you from nature's energetic attractor fields. And of course, if we're made of atoms and atoms are energy and there's other energy, energy can go to energy outside of our thoughts that these things can happen. Okay? So if you want to know more about where these numbers come from, I would suggest that you buy Hawkins' first book, which is called Power versus Force. And Hawkins states that below 200, an individual within those negative fields, their thoughts will default to victim mentality perspectives, causing them to try to force things to happen. Like a depressed person having to force himself to get out of bed. the anxious person has to force others to reassure them, or they have to control others so that they don't get upset themselves. And this forces them to use lots of energy when not much energy is available to them in the first place. Whereas from 200 upwards, there's no need to force anything, because it's very powerful to just love and accept, as opposed to fearing and controlling. It's very powerful to be optimistic. It takes no energy. People say, yeah, I think that'll work, let me give it a try. And it's very powerful to not take personally what others say or do to you, because actually that's their problem, not yours. Why do you need to make it your problem? So at the higher level, you're not having to force anything to be a certain way for you to feel okay. You are choosing to feel okay regardless of what happens to you or around you. Can you see how these new ways of functioning, they hardly use any energy? Plus, you're also residing in a more positive energy field of higher energy due to your thought patterns, should you need to draw more energy in to help you to take action. Those of you who are interested in the law of attraction, you'll see from this model why it works so much better for those with positive conscious mindsets above 200, as they already have access to these higher energy attractor fields, which may then be used to energize their intentions. In addition, just by being in these higher level energy fields, through changing the way that you consciously think and behave, you will always be pulling towards you that which resonates at the same level. And this is why it seems that happy people attract more luck and depressed people attract more misfortune. Because from nature's perspective, that is what's happening. We unknowingly pull to us that which is at the same frequency as us. Therefore, it makes sense to rise up through the levels by changing our conscious awareness, by having positive intentions, and by venting trapped trauma out from within us. So I can hope you can see why I spent so much time in this course asking you to change the way you think from a fear-based manner to one of more courage and optimism. Remember, thoughts have power. Are you thinking at level 100, which is anxiety, or are you thinking at level 300, which is acceptance? In addition, on the right-hand side of the chart, you can see how the population of the world calibrate and disperse. Okay? Across the whole world, 78% of all the people calibrate less than 200. Whereas in countries such as the UK and the US, it's about 49% of the population that are below 200. And though there are fewer individuals at the higher levels, due to their energy being log-based, higher energy, they offset many people at the lower levels, thus raising the average for the world to be above 200. And lots of people ask me, how do I motivate myself? And my answer is rather simple, okay? Rather than trying to change the world or help everybody, I work on raising myself to my highest level of consciousness as possible. Because those higher energy level fields, they feel nice, okay? And they help me to produce better work, and they attract to me better opportunities. And just by working on myself, I'm raising the average for the world. Therefore, it imbues a deep sense of purpose within myself. So allow me to take you through the map and to pull out the salient points so you can decide whether or not to study Hawkins' work further, although I would wholeheartedly tell you it was a radical game changer for me and my process of finding calmness, purpose, and direction. So if we start at the bottom of the chart with shame, guilt, and apathy, you'll see that this is an energy field that comes from hopelessness, despondency, and depression. There is only just enough power to stay alive or to fuel a slow, passive, suicidal pathway by the neglect of reversible states like loneliness, boredom, alcoholism, diabetes, and obesity. It's actually the individual's energy field that is influencing how they unconsciously think and behave. It's as if that negative energy field sucks away that person's spirit or their will to live. They are consumed by the feeling of negativity, shame, guilt, humiliation, poor self-esteem or low self-worth. And those energy fields of 20 to 50 instigate thoughts of self-rejection, unworthiness and failure, which makes the person shrink and want to hide away from life, with thoughts of, oh, I'm not worthy and who'd want to hang out with me. However, these shrinking egoic fears of shame, guilt and apathy, they can be reversed if the person was prepared to consider that this perspective is a self-abusive and unloving victim mindset. But what I need you to grasp is that the energy field you reside in, which you are influencing through your thoughts and behaviors, is perpetuating the very energetic field that subsequently attracts to you your health, your social connections and your life opportunities, which ultimately are the manifestation of your life. Therefore, to break out of these lower states, we must acknowledge that the ego thinks its happiness is based upon pleasure coming from something or somebody outside of yourself. The person feels powerless and is experiencing feelings of victimhood. It's as if they feel they have lost their source of happiness. But if you can consciously orientate yourself into a new perspective of realizing that you are the captain of your own ship, and though it's scary and fearful, it is possible to navigate forwards in new directions. I like Henley's poem Invictus, which somebody once adapted to read, "Due to the circumstances beyond my control, I am captain of my ship and master of my soul." Now, I like that. And this is such a powerful and high energy mindset to begin to contemplate. So moving from level 50 of apathy to 100 of fear can now be seen as a positive stride forward rather than a scary one. That person is now in a state of fear rather than depression. And although horrible, fear and anxiety are a higher energy than depression. It has movement within it. You can move towards your fear or you can move away from your fear, whereas depression is so static and motionless. And from this higher energy of fear, you can leverage the next level of desire up at 125. Can you see that we should always be looking to the next higher energy attractor field to guide our decisions rather than the existing one or the lower fields beneath? So from the energy field of desire, which controls much of the planet, it orientates them towards something. They want a new job. They want to change a relationship. They want some new clothes, a new lifestyle, or whatever it is they crave. But of course, they must still recognize that they are still enslaved by that desire, because they may be disappointed if they can't achieve it or don't get it. And that's why I like people to have intentions, compass settings, where they say, I'm heading in this direction and we'll see what happens. I'll just keep taking action towards that. And let me say this again, because this is so very, very important. Your brain is being coerced into those negative thought patterns by the energy field that it is experiencing. Okay? It's just nature affecting your thought forms. And typically, anxious people try to consciously manage their unconscious thoughts rather than consciously adapting to a mindset of a naturally higher energy field. It's almost as if the brain is like an aerial that can receive information from nature, but the knowledge they receive is only concordant with the energy that that person can currently handle. And this is why we must embrace ERP, exposure and response prevention therapy, so we can learn to handle more discomfort. Because if we can handle more discomfort, okay, then nature can give us more opportunities of a higher order. We become more value to nature, so nature begins to use us. It's not as if, as a person escapes anxiety, that life's problems go away. In fact, life's problems get bigger because they're out there starting companies and doing all these different things, okay? But what happens is now, is with this new energy, you can handle doing all of those things, okay? And you can enjoy being part of creation. I hope this is making some sense. Okay, as the individual moves up again from desire at 125 to anger at 150, this rise in energy is very powerful, although it's often confusing. Anger, though still a negative energy, has much more energy than grief, fear, or desire. And the person gets fired up and says, no, I'm not accepting that anymore. No, I won't do that. You go and do that. Okay? So suddenly the person wants something better for themselves. Okay? Therefore, that old frustration puts the new energy of anger, which elevates them through action to the level of pride at 175. And once again, though this is a higher energy field than fear, it's still under 200 and therefore negative. At level 175 of pride, this is the level of inflation and arrogance. And often the person is unteachable and has a very closed mind. They have unknowingly stepped into duality, meaning because they think they're right, they must defend against those who might prove them to be wrong. Therefore, they are constantly acting defensively and expecting attack. And because I believe we should always be looking to the energy field above our current station for guidance, then I would advise a person at level 175 of pride to look up to the level of courage at 200 for their inspiration to move forward. Because at this beautiful level of courage, negative energy transforms into positive energy, and it's where truth and integrity begin to become a driving factor in the person's life. And it's very different from how they might expect it to be. At 200, they truthfully say, well, actually, I don't know what will happen. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I don't know if there's a God. I don't know if these energy fields are true, okay? They are no longer having a victim's perspective, and they're no longer having to defend themselves, and they are no longer blaming something or someone else for the woes in their life. You could say they're standing in their own truth and accepting the absolute truth of that situation. And who says that they should know what to do? Who said we should have all the answers? You know, I think we're here to learn. We're here to step out into the great unknown and to just experience what happens. Now, I believe this to be very, very powerful information. And in that energy field of courage, it allows them to take action. They can say no to a person. You know, they can ask somebody out on a date, or they can request a pay rise. And although they may still feel nervous, they have enough positive energy to handle that discomfort. Why? Because it's in their self-truth to be in a relationship, and it's in their self-worth to be paid appropriately. You know? And as they further step into their divine truth, as opposed to their brain's egoic fears, the field increases to 250, and this is called neutrality. And here the primary emotion is being non-attached. If it goes your way, great. And if it doesn't, well, that's fine too. You know, you're no longer a victim. And this is a powerful state, as the ego is no longer adding stories of lack. Everything is just what it is. And of course, this is the beginning of the feelings of freedom. If it goes your way, that's good. And if it doesn't, well, that's fine too. Okay. But though freeing, it still lacks the feeling of aliveness. How can I explain that? If you say to a person at the level of neutrality, where should we eat tonight? They'll say, I don't mind. And although that's easygoing, which is much better than fearful or controlling, it's hardly energetic or inspirational. Okay, so as we keep moving upwards, at level 310, we step into willingness. And this is a powerful field, and its associated energy floods the brain with the concept of aliveness, hope, optimism, and self-propulsion. This means that person is no longer resisting life. They are willing to step into it just to see what will happen. Okay, they embrace life. They become open to life and the realization that there is so much to learn and there is so much to experience. Suddenly, they find themselves in nature's energy field of acceptance up at 350. And because they are thinking and behaving differently by optimistically trusting themselves, okay, and optimistically trusting the world around them, an inner transformation, inner transcendence occurs. The individual begins to own the fact that, of course, okay, they are the source of their own happiness. And really, how could it ever have been any other way? They become more realistic. They accept their strengths and they smile at their own weaknesses. They say, oh yeah, I'm happy to help you start that project, but as you know, I'm not a finisher, so you might want to ask Mary over, as she has incredible attention to detail and she likes finishing, things like that. Can you see that in this powerful energy field, pride doesn't get in the way? The person sees the world and themselves as they are and as it is, rather than the ego wishes it would be. If a person at the lower levels or guilt or shame were to be thrown into prison, they may sink into depression or take their own life. However, at level 350, you accept what is and you decide to knuckle down, and maybe you use that time wisely to get fit, get a degree or write a book. Life is as life is, and they just dance with it. Certainly they begin to trust it more. And I think this is very sensible, because at these higher levels of energy, nature seems to be very benevolent. Why wouldn't it be? Okay, it's just nature supporting itself through those willing to engage with it. So I think it's all about the focused and intentional energy that they put into life, which will cause all those other atoms and energy fields around them to become tickled, okay? And then something agitates something else, which starts something else. And of course, it will end up with something coming back to them. How could it not? But what will it be? Who knows? And at this level, they're okay with that. Then as we move up again to level 400, they step into the energy of reason, logic, and understanding. This is often the realm of science, medicine, politics, and comprehension. And this energy field imbues the brain with the power to handle large amounts of data and to draw reasonable conclusions and to be able to communicate more effectively. However, there's a limiting side too, because as you reach the top of the 400s at 499, this is like a glass ceiling, okay, where the more intellectual and the more logical the ego becomes, the more it ingrains itself into the Newtonian perspective world of cause and effect, which assumes that unless we can scientifically prove something, then it can't be true. It's like an atheist saying, if you can't prove there's a God, then there isn't a God. But how could you prove something that doesn't exist in matter? Or in this plane? Science works on that which can be touched and measured in this realm. But love is real, and that can't be proved or measured because it seems to be an energy field. Therefore, if a person wants to expand above and into this level of 500 of real love, it entails the acceptance that there is much that we don't know. Okay? How did that woman lift that tree off that trapped child? In a field under 499, the person says, well, that's an interesting story, but I need more proof. Above 500, the person says, yeah, she pulled the energy required from nature's field to save that child, because love is such an empowering positionality. So at these higher levels of 500, the brain begins to naturally release endorphins and opens banks of neurons that ensure that person is a loving person. And that love takes no positionality, and it dissolves negativity by reconceptualizing it rather than attacking it. It supports and it nurtures life, and of course it's the beginning of true happiness. Hawkins says that this state is reached by around 1 in 250 people, and therefore is a very achievable goal for those with an open mind and a clear intention. Up at energy level 540, that love becomes unconditional, and it's accompanied by joy and ecstasy, because these energy fields are just so high frequency, high energy, that they just flood the body with feelings of ecstasy and bliss. And this is the energy level of true healers, advanced spiritual teachers, and people that we might call saints. There is a huge capacity for patience and a persistently positive attitude, and their energy has a notable effect on those around them. But I think it's true to point out at this level that it is the field or nature working through them that is affecting others, not the individual themselves. Okay? And we may label that action as divinity, nature, or source, or the field acting through that person. And then up at level 600, we fully step into the self with a big S, and we might call that state enlightenment or illumination. But as that is so extremely rare, we'll leave that for another day.